This is a wild encounter that happened to me last year. At the moment, I wasn't so scared. But as I told people the story afterward, I started to realize just how scary and horrific this encounter could have been. One thing my wife and I love to do is hit up garage sales to try and find awesome stuff for cheap. I'm the king of bargains, and I just can't pass them up. I'm left-handed, by the way. One time I managed to grab myself a left-handed set of golf clubs for only $30. And the guy was having surgery and wasn't going to be able to golf anymore. That's the type of deals I hunt for. Well, last year in the middle of the summer, my wife and I were garage sale hunting. I found what I thought was an estate sale. A fairly large house in my neighborhood was selling just about everything you can think of. The couple running this sale was probably in their mid-30s, if I had to guess. I got to talking to the guy and found out it wasn't an estate sale technically. There was just about everything being sold in that house though. At that time, the house belonged to the guy's father, who was still alive and sitting in a chair next to the garage. The man explained to us that his father was losing it mentally, and he was going to be living with them. They planned on keeping the house, but wanted to get rid of most of the stuff inside so they could renovate it. Then have a space they could rent out. Most of the stuff in the garage was just junk, years worth of clutter that old people tend to accumulate. Then I saw something that really caught my eye. There was a really cool military sword. It was engraved with all sorts of writing, had an eagle for the handle, and to cap it off, it looked like it was solid gold. Whether it was or wasn't real gold, I didn't know at the time. I grabbed the sword and asked the man if this was truly for sale. The guy shrugged it off and said, "Yeah, I'll sell it to you for $25. I gave him $30 and walked away with a shiny new toy. As I was walking to my car with my wife, I happened to look up and see the old man. He was standing up and looked concerned and angry. As I was driving away, I saw the old man walk over to his son. He appeared to be yelling at him. The son just kept putting his hands up in the air, while the old guy screamed and screamed. I was curious as to what they were fighting about, but ultimately I forgot about it. That night, when we got home, we were sitting in the backyard grilling some steaks. I was telling a couple of my neighbors that came over about the sword. It was only a matter of time until I went inside and grabbed it so I could show it off to my buddies. The night continued on and we ate our steaks outside. We continued hanging out and enjoying the evening. Around 8 p.m. that night though, one of my friends said he thought he could hear someone knocking on my front door. I didn't really put any stock into that. We were out back, and I figured there was no way my friend could have heard that from all the way out here. Not 5 minutes later, though, I heard my wife scream at the top of her lungs. We all turned around, and jumping into my backyard was the old man from the garage sale. He wasn't limping or moving sluggishly or anything. He came out like a bat out of hell and made a shot right for the sword. I started to approach the man and calmly told him to hold on and relax. He didn't listen to me. He grabbed the sword and, I kid you not, took a swing to take my head off. Thankfully, he was still an older man, and I was able to move out of the way in time. The man was screaming erratically, claiming I'd stolen his sword. For some reason, I was still trying to plead with the guy, even though he was trying to stab me to death. Finally, I just had enough. I dodged a swing and tackled the guy to the ground. I tried to do it as gently as possible. I was scared with him being so old that I was going to break him in half or something. I was trying to figure out in my head how this guy even found out where I lived. I had no idea. My wife called the police, who showed up pretty quickly. Right away, the old man started telling them I'd stolen his sword. I was able to calmly explain to the police that I'd bought it from a garage sale earlier, and they could contact the man I bought it from. It took a while, but the son was finally notified and came rushing over. He must have apologized a million times. Obviously, I did not press charges. The old man clearly wasn't all there mentally. Perhaps the most terrifying part was when the son and the cop were talking, though. The old man snuck over and grabbed the sword. My wife just happened to see him grabbing it and pointed it out right away. I still think to myself what the man would have done if my wife hadn't seen that. I think he would have tried to use it on me again. I exchanged numbers with the son, just in case I had to reach out to him for some reason. After that, I became much more vigilant of all the locks in my house. I didn't give the sword back in the end. My conscience sort of eats at me for that. In hindsight, I would have just given it back, since it was clearly important for some reason to the old man. Unfortunately, the old man died shortly after. The only thing I can say for sure is that since that horrible evening in the backyard, I've not had any further interactions with the family. I used to work at a gym that was open for 24 hours. It was a pretty large one and had more than just a weight and exercise room. We had 2 levels, a basketball court, several classrooms for fitness classes like yoga, and multiple weight and cardio areas. The gym had a good number of employees as well, and it really needed them for just how large it was. At night, not quite as many people worked there though, because obviously not very many people would work out during those hours. Well, when I first started, I was mostly working overnight hours. Most of the time, we'd have about 4 or 5 employees working at once, but they would be spread out. You know, somebody would be at the front desk, somebody else would be at the other desk, and the others would go around and do whatever was needed. We would switch around who did what, and we were all trained to do several different things. One night I was working, and it was really late at this time. It was probably about 1 a.m. or so. That was about the quietest time there. From midnight to 4 a.m., it would be really quiet. There would be a decent amount of people who would start to show up at 4 a.m., but it would still be quiet. It would get significantly busier at 6 a.m. That's usually around the time I would get off. Anyway, on this particular night, it was especially dead. I think there was maybe 1 or 2 people in the entire gym working out. I went to get some cleaning done of several areas that were sort of out of the way. The more common areas would be cleaned more often and had a higher priority. The other spots would only be cleaned overnights when there wasn't much to do. I had a little cart with some cleaning supplies on it. I went to an area where I was all by myself. The gym was not a big open area, but more so many different compartmentalized areas. I got to work cleaning and became pretty focused on what I was doing. I actually really enjoyed the cleaning part of the job. I found it very relaxing and satisfying. I was over there for about 20 to 30 minutes when I heard a noise from a ways away. I assumed it was just somebody weightlifting. I wasn't aware of anybody else in the immediate area. Sometime later, though, I heard it once more, and this time I realized it sounded like it was coming from the stairwell. Needless to say, it was not common for people to hang out in the stairwell, but sometimes people would walk up and down it. The noises didn't sound like somebody exercising. I didn't know why someone would be hanging out in there for that long. Maybe it was one of my coworkers doing something. Because of that, I decided to go over and check what was going on. I casually walked over to the stairwell, which was over to the left and across the room. It was also a very secluded area of the gym. When I got there, I started to walk in, but saw a man was inside. He clearly did not work at the gym, and also wasn't wearing workout clothes like most of the members. He was wearing black jeans and a black jacket, and had long stringy hair. He was facing in the opposite direction, just standing there and not really doing anything. I turned around and walked away, going back to what I was doing. I finished cleaning that area and forgot all about that guy. There were a few classrooms nearby, so I went inside one to clean them. But these classrooms had hardwood floors, a few mirrors, and a couple of windows as well. Those windows looked out into the hallway. I was cleaning this classroom like I was supposed to. About 10 minutes in, though, something caught my eye. The windows were sort of tinted, but I noticed somebody standing outside one of them. I realized it was the guy I'd seen in the stairwell earlier. He was just standing there looking in at me through the window. It sort of gave me the creeps. I tried to ignore it and kept on cleaning, but he was there for an uncomfortable amount of time, probably over 3 minutes. I looked up and saw he was gone eventually. Whoever this guy was, he was behaving pretty sketchy. I questioned if he was even a member of our gym at all. Obviously, I didn't know all the members because it was a really large gym, but I recognized a good amount of them. For what it's worth, I had never seen this guy here before. I did my best to just do my job. I cleaned several other areas, straightened various things out. I organized the weights that had been put back in the wrong places and out of order machines and such. When I was doing all of this, I saw the man again. He was not near me, but was kind of aimlessly walking around. I didn't know what he was doing here, but he was clearly not here to work out. Still, it wasn't like I could just go up and ask him or something. We had someone working at the front desk at all times. You have to scan in at it to enter the gym, so this guy must be a member. Otherwise, I didn't know how he could have gotten inside. I went on with my job and was headed to the corner of the weight area. I was cleaning some of the mirrors. This area was also out of the way. As I was heading over there, I once more saw the guy, except this time he was walking toward me carrying a barbell. He was holding the barbell over his shoulder, and immediately I got a bad feeling. He was staring daggers at me. I tried to move away without making it obvious I was trying to get away from him. I walked away from the corner and to the side. I was near the stairwell, so I started to move towards it. The man began to walk faster toward me. Was he planning to attack me with that barbell? At that point, I ran into the stairs and jogged up them. I figured it would be nearly impossible to run up the staircase holding a barbell with my kind of speed, especially if the guy didn't work out regularly. I heard the guy enter behind me, but he didn't appear to be trying to follow me up the stairs. When I made it to the top, I heard the extremely loud noise of the barbell being slammed into the ground. I walked over to the front desk area and found one of my coworkers. I told them about the suspicious man. He didn't know who I was talking about. I realized that somehow this guy must have snuck into the building. We had to make him leave. We carefully walked back down the stairs, and I saw the barbell on the ground. The man was nowhere to be seen. After searching around a short time later, we located him walking to a nearby cardio area. We tried to talk to him, but he ignored all attempts. I asked the man if he was a member, but he just kept walking aimlessly, wouldn't even answer either of us. My coworker asked him to leave, and he just turned and headed another direction. We didn't really know what to do. We decided we might have to call the police. As my coworker tried to make it clear to him he had to leave or we were calling the cops, the guy just turned and tried walking away. He then started running away from us. We just let him go because it seemed like he might be dangerous. We went back to the front desk and called the cops. They arrived a short time later and went into the gym to look for the guy. They eventually found him hiding behind a Stairmaster machine. He would not leave at first, and the police had to physically escort him out of the gym. I don't know what his problem was, but either way, I was really glad when he was gone. And that was by far my scariest experience working at the gym. For a little background, I'm a woman, and I've been going to the gym for several years. I work out at about the same time every day, and this is something that happened just last year. The gym that I go to, I would describe as an average size, I suppose. Typically, I work out in the afternoon after I get done with work. Then I head home afterwards. Every time I'm at the gym, I notice a lot of the same people working out, around the same time as me. I imagine they must have a similar schedule. This gym is never particularly busy, which is one of the best parts of it really. One day, I arrived at the gym after work like any other day. I went into the locker room and got changed, then went out to warm up on the treadmill. The treadmills at my gym face some of the weight rooms up ahead. There are also a couple of machines that face them. I remember that as I was walking on the treadmill, I noticed a guy sitting down at the bicep curl machine. It just so happened to be facing my direction. A while later, I looked back up and saw the guy was just staring at me, not even working out. I looked away, only to see him staring at me again. After the third time catching him watching me, it was beginning to get really awkward. It was also a guy I'd never seen here before. I tried to keep an eye on him. He didn't even seem to be trying to use the machine, other than to sit down and observe me. I did my best to ignore the man and move on with my workout. I finished on the treadmill and moved away to the weight area. This was past where the man was. For the next 10 minutes or so, everything was fine. But when I turned around, I saw the guy was now sitting on a bench a ways away. He was again staring at me. I thought to myself, wow, great. A gym creep is onto me. I wasn't really sure how to handle it. The man appeared to be in his 40s, average height and weight, light brown, sort of messy hair. Once again, he was not working out at all, just following me around the gym watching me. I really couldn't believe the nerve of this guy to do this so blatantly. I moved to another corner of the gym where I could do my same workout. I told myself to just ignore him. I worked out for 20 or so minutes over there until I was done. When I stopped, I turned around to leave. Once more, the guy was in the area. This time, he was not being as obvious though. I never noticed him doing any sets or attempting to work out at all. I decided to just leave. I was pretty much done with what I wanted to do anyway. I went into the women's locker room and started to get changed. I had just grabbed my gym bag, and when I came out of the locker room, I didn't immediately notice the guy around. That seemed like a good sign. As I was walking to the front door, though, I saw him sitting in a chair in the lobby area. It appeared he must have been waiting for me. I passed him by, but he didn't make any attempts to get up. This made me feel at least a little bit better. I got back to my car and left to drive home. I just hoped the man would not become a regular at my gym. There was no way that he wasn't following me around and staring at me on purpose. I was definitely going to report him if that continued. I drove home, and it took me about 10 minutes. I made it back to my house. After going inside, I started to go through my normal routine. I would unpack my stuff, then take a shower, maybe make some food. Before I could do that, though, as I was in my living room, I noticed out of my window a car driving by very slowly down the street. Immediately, that was suspicious. The car went a little ways past my house, then looked like it was going to pull over to the side of the road. It went out of my sight, and for a moment I figured it was actually a neighbor's or something. I was just about to walk away from the window. I decided not to for some reason, though. I watched after the car parked and heard the door open. Moments later, I saw a man walking down the side of my street. It was the same man from the gym earlier. I couldn't believe my eyes. He walked up the street and right into my front yard. I moved over to a better place to look out the window, where I was less visible. The man walked right up to my front doorstep and knocked on the door. I kept watching him. After knocking, he kind of moved and went behind a brick pillar on the front step. It was an area where he would have been out of sight if I just opened the door. Obviously, I did not go answer it. Instead, I immediately called the police. Several minutes later, the man knocked again, this time louder than before. After I didn't answer that time, he left. I watched him walk back to his car. Probably less than a minute after he drove away, the police got there. I told them how the man left, and they were able to easily locate him and pull him over. I'm pretty sure they just told him to leave me alone, though. I don't think they gave the guy a ticket or anything. Surely it must have worked because I haven't seen the man ever since. Ever since I was a little kid, I've loved going to garage sales and estate sales. We didn't have a lot of money growing up, and garage sales were a place I could find toys or books at prices my parents could afford to pay. As I got older, I just became extremely fascinated with what other people had in their collections, what they were selling. I found everything, from vintage Disney snow globes to stamps dating back almost 100 years. Anyway, for the last 7 or 8 years, myself and a few of my neighbors started a neighborhood garage sale. It started really small, but now I'd say about 50% of the neighborhood participates. Other communities even drive in to shop at the garage sale. My husband is a collector of many things, so we usually have at least a few good items that we sell for cheap, just to get them out of the house. We have a few regulars who come to the sale every year. They'll grab whatever furniture or large items we have for sale that year. The story I'm going to share with you took place 3 years ago in July, during our neighborhood sale. In our postings in the newspaper and on social media, we give the hours and the days of the sales. We specifically ask for no early birds, because usually people are still setting up all their yard sales. I usually have everything out in the garage the night before, and just drag it out to the driveway the next day. I remember my husband was up having some coffee, as he had to work that Saturday. Luckily, his job is work from home, so he uses his office in the basement. He asked if I needed any help setting up, and I said I was just moving a few tables. We had some time and he should finish his coffee. Around 7 a.m., I heard a slamming on the door. Yes, a slamming, as though somebody was trying to break it down or something. I ran over to the door and whipped it open. "Can I help you?" It was a middle-aged man. Yeah, I'm here for the sale. It said you had collectibles and stuff." "Yeah, I believe we do have some. They're my husband's, but the sale doesn't start for another hour." Now clearly annoyed, the man said, "Well, I'm here right now, so just let me look around already." I tried to remain calm and friendly. "Well, we aren't quite set up yet. We do open at 8 a.m. A big frown came across his face. He turned around and said, "You don't have to be rude about it." I thought about yelling something back at the man, but I figured I should just let it go and be the bigger person. He got into a rusty maroon pickup truck and drove off who knows where. My husband asked who it was. I'm sure I said some sarcastic comment about someone pounding on the door and him letting me answer it alone, not even bothering to come over and check. Eventually the sale started. It was busy as it always is. I was struggling to keep up with customers early on. About 10 a.m. there was a little break in the rush though. I put my head down to check my phone briefly, and I heard someone say, "Hey, how are you?" To my surprise, it was the same guy from earlier that morning. He seemed to be as chipper as he ever was, like our interaction earlier had never even happened. He gave me a wide smile that exposed his mouth. It looked like he had a total of 4 teeth. He browsed the collectibles for quite some time. He brought up a few baseball cards and checked out. He thanked me and asked me if there was anything else for sale. I said, "Nope, this is it." He said he was just wondering if maybe I had any more cards or DVDs inside. I told him I could check with my husband and there could potentially be more tomorrow, but for today, this was it. He didn't say anything, just turned around and left. I took a little break around lunchtime to have lunch with my husband. We both ate at the garage while he was on his break. There were a few people browsing, but not many purchases. That's when I saw the maroon truck pull up in front for the 3rd time that day. I leaned over to my husband and said the guy had been here twice already. He was the one banging on the door at 7 a.m. The man got out and approached us. "I was here earlier, and I think you said there was going to be some more stuff here?" I looked at my husband and back at him. I said, "That's not the case. My husband put everything out that's for sale." After checking with him, there won't be any new inventory. The same frown from earlier in the morning was back on his face. He looked at my husband. I mean, can I take a look around inside? I bet you got lots of stuff in there. I could probably put a good offer on it. We didn't have anything else for sale. Now, with this big smile on his face, he said, "Are you sure?" My husband cut him off and said, "Listen, that's all we have. I appreciate you stopping by, but if there's anything else you're interested in, I'm sure there's plenty of other sales that might have what you need." The man spun around and got back into his truck. The rest of the night went with no issues. My husband and I had made a nice chunk of change for a single-day sale. We honestly did so well that we decided to cancel our second day. I thought I would stop by a few of my neighbors' houses, who still had a lot of stuff, and help them out for the day. It was about 7:15. I went over to Debbie's and, strangely enough, noticed her garage was closed. She wasn't setting anything up yet. She told me to come over at 7, but I came a little late just in case it was too early. After contemplating if I should go back home or not, I went to the front door. Before I even had a chance to knock, she opened the door in a robe, clutching tissues with blood running down her face. "What happened?" I asked her. She said someone had broken into the garage and took most of her stuff. As she was running through it, I cut her off at one point and said, "Can you repeat what you just said?" She said the only thing her husband had caught when she was being attacked was there was a red pickup racing down the street, just fast enough he wasn't able to get a license plate. I asked if the pickup truck was red and rusty. Her husband overheard and said, "How did you know that?" I told them about my encounter the day before. They asked if I could share a description and other information with the police. I agreed, but from what I recall, no one was ever charged, and they weren't able to get their belongings back. I know some of you may not think this is the scariest post, but having the feeling that in your own neighborhood or your own house, you're no longer safe, is one of the rawest fears there is in the world. This happened to me when I was in college. It was during my second year of university. I lived in a small house, which I shared with my roommate Thomas. The university I went to is rather large. I think about 20,000 total students. This took place sometime during the first semester. I remember that one day I went on Instagram and saw I had a new follower. I clicked on the profile and saw a girl named Rhonda. She had my school's initials in her profile, as well as what I assumed to be her graduating year. She was also followed by two people I knew from college. Not really close friends or anything, but some guys I did know. I realized that Rhonda must have gone to my school as well, so I followed her back. Her profile didn't have too many pictures. A few selfies and some pictures of her dog. That was about it. After following her back, I went about with my own things and didn't think much of it. A few days went by, and then I'd noticed that Rhonda had liked all of my photos on Instagram. I had many posts dating all the way back to my early years of high school, and she'd liked every single one. I found that nice, but also a little bit random and somewhat odd. Maybe she liked me or something. She didn't comment on anything, nor did she send me any messages. Several more days went by after this. One night, Thomas was studying at a classroom, and I was at home by myself. There was a knock on the door. It was around 9 p.m. at night, and I wasn't expecting any company. I had no clue as to who this could be. I had been in my room, so I didn't hear the knock very well. I almost wondered if I'd even heard it at all. I got up and went out into the hallway, and then I heard another knock. I realized, though, that the knocking was not coming from the front door. It was coming from the back door. This was especially unnerving. I walked over to the back door and peeked out the window. As I did, I saw a girl standing there. It was Rhonda, but I didn't recognize her at first. I had only seen a few selfies of her on Instagram. I don't think I'd ever met her in person before. As I was standing by the door, she tried to open it. I opened it just a crack and said hello to her. I asked her what she was doing here. She asked me if she could come inside. I had a bad feeling about this. Something about her was creeping me out, but I couldn't figure out what it was. Well, aside from the fact she'd showed up unannounced to my back door at 9 p.m. By the way, I hadn't told her where I lived, so how did she know where my house was? I asked her, but she simply asked to come inside again. I really didn't want her to. I told her I was really busy with homework and I had to get back to studying. She stood there for a moment looking really disappointed. Then she said she was just going to go. She walked off sort of angry. I was glad she was actually leaving, but I was more confused than anything now. After she left, I went back inside and went into my room. I then blocked her on Instagram. I felt she had crossed a line by showing up to my home unannounced like that. When Thomas got back home, I asked him if he knew Rhonda at all. He said no. I showed him her picture to make sure, and he still didn't recognize her. I told him what happened, and he was just as confused as I was. I was hoping that maybe he'd known Rhonda and she was there to talk to him or something. The fact that he didn't know her at all made it that much more creepy and weird. The very next night, I was pulling a late-night session. I had some stuff due at 11:59 p.m., and I was trying to get it all done at the last minute. It was like 11:30 or so, and I was almost done. That's when I heard Thomas call me from the living room. He had been in there watching TV. I asked him what he wanted, and he told me there was some girl standing at the front door. I knew who it had to be immediately. I looked out the front door, only to see Rhonda just standing there. She didn't knock on the door or anything. She appeared to look over and noticed me. Then she turned and ran off. It was the creepiest thing I'd ever seen. I went back and finished my homework, then joined Thomas in watching TV. I kept glancing back out the windows to see if she would come back, but luckily she didn't. After that, I never saw her again. I remember I asked Thomas to look her up on Instagram months later in the school year. She had a few more pictures and appeared to still attend our university. I still don't know what she was doing. It was just really creepy behavior. I remember I began receiving several death threats in junior high, which continued all the way until I dropped out of high school. Threatening notes were passed to me in class. Threats would be placed in my locker. Things were shouted at me in the hallways. And on several occasions, I was physically grabbed and the threats were whispered into my ear. Administration never did anything about it because the threats were being made by respected athletes. They also involved the wrong kind of weapon. By their logic, death threats had to involve a gun or a knife, or they weren't serious at all. I have very severe food allergies. Most of the threats involved triggering my allergic reaction without me knowing, although a few more were about them raping me. I left school because it started affecting me so badly. For the next few years, I was careful to only leave the house when school was in session, so I wouldn't run into any of those old classmates. I had reoccurring nightmares where they'd come and attack me. Just the thought that multiple people could hate me that much for no reason is still terrifying to me. Some of the threats I received were incredibly detailed. They expressed scientific curiosity in seeing what my anaphylactic shock would look like up close. Some of them talked about killing my pets, then my family, and leaving them for me to find, with my allergens scattered all around them, so attempting to bury them would kill me too. They also talked about forcing me to perform sexual acts on them after poisoning because they said sex felt better if the girl was dying. One particularly sadistic individual would come up behind me and run their fingers on my neck. then ask me to guess if they just rubbed allergens on me or not. I've realized that as an adult, I'm a pretty big people pleaser. I'm guessing because I don't want anyone to get on my bad side and decide that anaphylactic shock is hilarious. What is up, guys? Blue Spooky here. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. If you liked the video, please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you feel so inclined. If you have any feedback for me as well, be sure to leave that in comments below the video. If you guys have a story you'd like to send in, or if you'd like to contact me for any reasons, there will be links to my social media in the description below the video, including my Facebook, Gmail, and Twitter accounts. Go ahead and send me a message on any of those, and I'll try to get to you as soon as possible. If you do decide to send in a story, please be sure to include in the tagline what the name of the story is if it has one, what type of story it is if it has one, and how you'd like to be credited in the description below the video. Please make sure to include as much detail as you feel comfortable with and try to use as much proper grammar as possible to make sure you have the highest chance of appearing in a future video. Overall, I think that's pretty much it for now, guys, so thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.